Welcome everyone! The truth is out here somewhere. I am going to review Season 1, Episode 7 of The X-Files. It's called Ghost in the Machine. And as the title implies, this one's about an artificial intelligence, about a computer that goes rogue and starts killing people. With a clear reason. It's kind of protecting itself. It's a little bit HAL 9000. In fact, hell, when it's being destroyed with a virus towards the end, it even says, what are you doing, Brad? Because Brad's the programmer who did the virus. He's also the programmer who built the computer. Yeah, I was looking forward to this, not because I necessarily thought it was going to be a great episode, but just because I have a bit of a guilty enjoyment of computer killer stories. You know, computers that turn bad, especially ones from like the 90s and the 80s when writers didn't really know a whole lot about computers yet, and there's a lot of like stuff that kind of feels a bit dated because of it. I find a lot of charm in that, and I would say that with this episode there's some of that, maybe not as much as I was hoping for, although to be fair there's actually a couple of things that it kind of like predicts in a weird way. So the computer that's the culprit in this is like the central operating software that runs this like building, and it's a computer company, and they've got this computer running everything, from the door locks to the phones to everything. Right? It feels a bit far-fetched for a computer to be doing all this in 1993, but fair enough, right? That's the premise. And I actually early on thought to myself, oh, it's interesting though that while this feels far-fetched for the time period, this is effectively what a smart home kind of is now. And, obviously modern business buildings will, use stuff like this. Maybe not for every little thing this computer's doing technically, but a lot of it, it's not as far-fetched today. And later on, the computer programmer, when we go to his fancy house, and he says he's basically got the same kind of thing happening where, the computer controls everything in the building, the cameras, all that stuff. He refers to it as a smart house. And I was like, oh, he actually used the right terminology, more or less. Like, this was actually kind of a glimpse of the future. Not that I have a smart house, not that most people probably don't yet, but it is a thing. It is a thing that people have. So that was kind of interesting. Yeah, I think the episode, like, it's got its moments, and I enjoyed bits and pieces of it. I think it maybe just doesn't focus on the stuff that I was as excited about as much as I was hoping. Like, I do really appreciate that we've got a computer system that's killing people with, like, the door controls and, like, making the water run and things like that, and distracting people by ringing the phone so they're in the right place to be electrocuted and things like that. I'm into all that kind of thing, and I do appreciate in the back chunk of the episode when Mulder and Scully are going into the building to try and deliver this virus that's going to destroy it. They, like, obviously they take the stairs because they realize, hey, the computer controls the elevator. And the very first time they go to the building for the first crime scene, there is a bit of a vibe when they go into the elevator where you're like, hey, this computer controls the elevator. This has kind of got a creepy kind of quality to it, because it's this very stainless steel elevator, so the location really kind of sticks out in your mind. So they have to wear gloves opening the doors. The computer's like locking them, and it feels like they're having to think outside the box, but it doesn't last very long. It's quite quick, and it's actually kind of like amusingly bad in a way where, like, they can't get through a door after they've been through the stairwell, so Scully goes into a vent to try and like sneak through to get somewhere. And eventually this character who was introduced as kind of the building's like manager lets Mulder in, and he just kind of like doesn't bother trying to like get Scully. So Scully has this little adventure that feels kind of separate to everything, where she's in the vent and the computers try to kill her by turning the fans on, and she's kind of like struggling. And by the time she finally comes out, she's got like scratches all over her head, and she's disheveled, and all of it feels a little bit like, I mean, obviously, yes, there's a twist here where the guy who's helping Mulder turns out to be working for the Department of Defense or whatever, and they want this computer tech. They want to do something with this AI. They think it's a great weapon that they can use, whereas Mulder's trying to destroy it. So eventually Scully comes in and she holds the guy up at gunpoint, and that's what allows Mulder to actually complete the virus. But at first he thinks this guy's helping him. It's kind of weird he doesn't say, hey, by the way, we should maybe go try and get my partner who's climbing through a vent in case she's in trouble. And then he's just sort of like talking to this guy and like, okay, that's, you know, open up the computer and stuff, while Scully's like dangling for her life inside the vent. I thought that was kind of funny. I don't think it's supposed to be funny, but I thought it was kind of funny. So yeah, I mean, some of the interesting things here thematically is that the guy who built this thing, basically he tries to like turn it off himself, and the computer fights back, and ultimately the computer sets this guy up as the killer of the two people that's killed thus far in the episode. Well, I'll talk about like who that is in a bit. Well, not the guy at the start, not so much. He's just an executive who wants to like cancel the project. There's nothing much to that. But there's like another FBI agent that knows Mulder that ends up being killed that we'll talk about. But he basically compares. This is actually great timing, because I just saw, you know, Oppenheimer come out, you know, like a month ago or so. All that's fresh in my head, and this guy actually compares himself to Oppenheimer, because he gets arrested and Mulder goes to see him. And Mulder at this point is convinced that it's the computer that's done it, because of course Mulder believes the fantastical thing. And this guy says, after Hiroshima, after they dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Oppenheimer, you know, regretted the day that he ever looked at an atom, right? I think that's the line they said. And basically he is letting himself, he signed a confession and he's letting himself go down for this murder, or these two murders, because he would rather bury the fact that this AI exists, because he thinks what government powers would do with it, it would be on the level of a nuclear bomb. It would ruin lives, maybe even worse than that did, if they actually get to use it. So he would rather be seen as a murderer and go down for it. And Mulder, in helping him plant his virus to destroy the thing, actually inadvertently also removes the evidence that proves that he's innocent. So this guy disappears. You know, Mulder goes to see Deep Throat a couple times in this episode, once in the middle and once again at the end, which is interesting that he's seeing Deep Throat for stuff that's got nothing to do with aliens, because his whole introduction was that, hey, aliens are like, you know, pulling some strings here, they're behind people in high places and all that. But he's just calling Deep Throat because, like, hey, like, why are there shady government people like up, you know, hiding all this stuff from the crime scene? And it turns out because people high up want this AI tech. They want this to wage war on their enemies or control the population, whatever it is. You know, like, it's all kind of speculation. But it's all kind of the same vibe that we had last time we saw Deep Throat, where he's like, they can do whatever they want. Like, you know, we're kind of helpless in all this. I think this was like one of the two things that maybe made the episode less exciting to me, when I was kind of into the idea of this building run by a computer trying to kill people. Like, there's definitely horror movies like that I really like, despite the fact that they're kind of goofy. Is the two things that it focuses on. In the middle and early part of the episode, a lot of it focuses on the fact that this other FBI agent that knows Mulder wants to, like, solve the case because he's in deep water for misplacing evidence in a previous case, so he's on probation. And there's an entire subplot where he steals some of Mulder's work and presents it as his own, and Mulder gets pissed about it, and then wants to be the one to bring this guy in when they think the computer guy is the murderer. They think, you know, he's got you know, motive, he's got the know-how to do this. He makes sense as a suspect, and when they think they've got some smoking gun evidence, he wants to bring him in, which is actually the moment where I think we, the audience, go, well, you're definitely dead then. You saying you're going to go off and do this on your own feels like you're just going off to be killed so that we can progress the plot some further. I thought everything with him was just kind of Like, I think this character was, you know, he's kind of two-dimensional. He doesn't really feel like a real person because he just exists to do the things that are going to upset Mulder, by and large. You know, he comes in and right away he feels like he's going to betray them somehow. And sure enough, he does. He does this shitty thing by presenting Mulder's work as his own. And then when Mulder confronts him about it, he's just like, hey, I didn't think it'd be a big deal. You're helping me on this case, so I use your notes. Don't get bent out of shape. And then he just kind of, that's basically it, right? He does kind of try to apologize a little bit, which I think is supposed to make us like him and feel sympathetic for him before he dies. I don't think it really worked. Which, by the way, the description of this episode said that on Halloween, Mulder and Scully investigate this thing, and there's like one pumpkin in like a scene early on. And I don't even think the characters ever even reference the fact that it's Halloween season. So I was disappointed with the lack of Halloween stuff, I have to say. And it's not like they did a spooky episode for Halloween, because most of the episodes of this show are spooky. That's the whole point. Spooky Mulder is that his nickname. So, anywho, what do I want to say about him? I don't really want to say anything else about him. He's just kind of, he has the death in the elevator. He's the one where the elevator gets like basically crashed with him in it, and that's how the computer kills him. And that's, it's a fine moment. It's more of that stuff would have been fun. I think a few more victims and a bit more maybe being trapped in the building and trying to like outsmart the computer by like doing things the analog way. And the clear example of that is using the stairs instead of getting to the death trap that is the elevator. But a bit more of those decisions having to be made would have been fun to watch, I think. And then the other thing that I wasn't as super into is that the entire ending, which revolves around this, this guy that works at the building turning out to be the Department of Defense and holding Mulder at gunpoint because no, the government wants this technology, so you will not destroy it. But they couldn't also, but they needed Mulder to like access the computer to open it up, so they had to like break a firewall, and then he was going to put in the virus. And this guy's like, no virus. Now we have access because you've opened it up, something like that. All of this stuff with him holding Mulder at gunpoint just kind of felt like, this isn't really what I was enjoying about the parts of this episode that I liked. Like, I totally get the comparison and like saying that, hey, the government having this tech would be a big deal. It's too powerful for them to have. They wouldn't be able to control it. Obviously, there's direct comparisons to HAL 9000 from 2001 that are sprinkled in here, very intentionally so. But there's also, like, it made me think a little bit of even Alien, or Aliens more specifically, the idea that Weyland-Yutani want the xenomorph to use it as a bioweapon when everyone else is like, no, you can't control this thing, it's just going to get everyone killed. That's kind of what them talking about this computer software in this episode feels like. And I appreciate that idea. I think that's a fine concept to play with. It's just not what I was enjoying about the episode, so it kind of felt like when the last chunk of the episode, it felt like it was starting to become what I really wanted, with Mulder and Scully sneaking into the building and trying to survive against the computer. But very quickly it pivoted to just this standoff with this guy, and I just didn't think that was as exciting. It was just kind of the duller part of the story. So while I appreciate the bigger idea that it's playing with there, it's ultimately just not really what I was enjoying about the early parts of the episode. And those early parts where, the computer turning something on to lure the guy into the bathroom and kill him, and every so often it would cut back to the computer and we'd see like a voice synthesizer talking as he hears what's going on. We'd see lights blinking. We'd sort of, at one point the computer accesses the report that Scully's written at her home computer, so her computer turns on, there's a dial-up sound, and then you see this computer looking at it and like sort of assessing the information and deciding what to do. I loved all those little things. Those were all really fun little like things that are tied to this type of 90s computer story, this computer AI gone awry. I was having fun with all those little moments, and I kind of wish it just veered more into that as opposed to the other stuff, which I conceptually understand why the government want this, but it's too powerful. I can understand why that plot's here. I think it's fine as an idea. All this stuff with Mulder's old partner, kind of like showing up for help and then kind of betraying Mulder. He's just kind of a meh guest star ultimately, or a guest character, I should say. So I wasn't really feeling that too much. I do want to point out though, while I was praising this for predicting some things like smart home stuff and like some of the things you'd use computers for in the future, I will say there's a couple of lines of dialogue that feel very of this era as far as talking about this stuff goes. when Mulder and Scully go to this guy's house and they're asking about the system and like, you know, how many people have access to it and who could have like hacked into it or you know, known how to get in. But then Mulder and Scully ask, could someone from the outside hack in, right? And obviously my modern brain's like, yeah, of course they could. Like anyone can hack into anything really if they like, you know, if they've got the know-how pretty much. And this guy's response is basically that answer, but he says, yeah, sure, there's all kinds of techno travelers and electro wizards out there. What do I say about that line of dialogue? Techno travelers and electro wizards. This is the type of dialogue that is so bad that I love about stories like this from TV shows in the 90s and 80s. Is that they're trying to sound cool. They're trying to, like, this is the sort of like babble that will be used to talk about these types of things in the future, and it just sounds nonsense. I was down for this episode. I was down for it, and it almost like just isn't as silly as I want it to be, or it didn't like delve into the type of computery stuff that I was really hoping for it, which is a shame. So part of that's my own expectations of what it could be, but I do think some of the other stuff that it spends time on instead, like the partner who betrays Mulder and ultimately dies, I think he's kind of a dull character, and the problem is that he never feels that interesting, and I think as soon as he comes into the episode, he's here as the plot device for like what he's going to be, and he never really feels like he's anything more than that. And that's, you know, just down to writing a more compelling character or maybe the performance at a push, but yeah, so that's a shame. It's also kind of funny hearing, like, and I guess they've hinted at this in the past, actually, that Mulder was actually a very good agent. And this guy reveres Mulder and wants his help because Mulder's so good at what he does. I guess that's kind of the dramatic irony of the fact that he is this, you know, he's in the basement as the X-Files guy. Everyone looks down on him now. But he actually was very good at just being an FBI agent until he pivoted into the types of cases that he wanted, which has earned him this reputation. But that's a good thing to remember, is he's very good at this. You know, he spots a clue early on in the crime scene where he asks about the phone, and then the other guy's like, why did you ask about the phone? And he notices that the phone in the bathroom is just slightly off the hook. And it's very subtle, but it's just slightly. It's like, okay, he was on the phone before he died. Or soon before he died, at least. So, yeah, like, I like that little reminder. So, you know, I appreciate that. But I could have done with more fun, like, killer computer stuff for sure. So I don't have too much to say about this one, ultimately, which is a shame. I was hoping I was going to have way more techno traveler and electro wizard stuff to talk about. But hey, it is what it is. It's a perfectly watchable, if not kind of, I imagine, forgettable enough episode. Which is a shame, because I was really wanting some of that. I will say this episode is also guilty of having people like say out loud what they're typing just for the sake of the audience hearing it, which, you know, does stick out to me a little bit. But, you know, it's a minor sin, all things considered. So, anywho, that's the episode of X-Files. Thank you for joining me. Let's have a look and see what's coming next time from the show. So episode 8 is called Ice. Do we have someone with ice powers? Well, let's read the IMDb description and find out. Mulder and Scully are sent to investigate when a team of geophysicists stationed on a remote Alaskan outpost are killed by a parasitic alien life form. We're doing The Thing? That's what this sounds. It sounds a little bit like The Thing. It sounds like we're doing Outpost in the Snow and people being picked off one by one. Okay. This actually sounds amazing. I hope this is good. Because it sounds like what I want. Okay, the computer episode let me down a little bit. Maybe this one will give me what I want from it. I'm into it. Oh, and Xander Berkeley's in the next episode? Okay. Well, and Felicity Hoffman, but I don't really care about her that much. Xander Berkeley, though, that's a nice face to see from time to time. Okay, I'm hyped for the next one. Alright, that's been my thoughts on this X-Files episode. Let me know what you think. You can support all the content, of course, by going over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and supporting us over there. and get some extra content. Me and Connor just started doing a monthly video game podcast exclusive to patrons. Although the first episode is free, you can actually watch or listen to the first episode for free over on Patreon. But some shows have early access. I do think eventually I am going to start putting all these classic TV shows like X-Files that I do on my own early access. I'm just trying to get ahead enough before I start doing that. But those will probably go up early at some point. But they aren't yet. I don't want to promise anything that isn't there. But the Star Trek discussions with Connor go up early at the $5 tier and up. And there's bonuses for the movie podcast that I do over in Mail Fuzz Movies with other people. Which if you haven't checked out, I should probably do this more where I just say, hey, there's a movie channel as well, Mailed Fuzz Movies. There's a horror movie podcast, there's a science fiction movie podcast, and like a franchise movie podcast that are all over there. So go and check out all that stuff. But that is the show. Thank you very much for joining me. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?